the leg is not one piece. It's a system made of different segments. Hi, my name is Eli and I'm going to talk to you about what is a kinetic chain. I've been teaching anatomy of movement for yoga teacher trainings for about 8 years now. And this is one of the most common questions I get from all my students. It doesn't matter if the course is in person or online. Every time we study the skeletal system, this is one of the questions that I have to reply. So I decided to make this video so this is more clear for you, because it's a concept that is, when you hear the definition, it may sound a little bit too technical, but it's very useful to understand this for our asana practice and when it comes to teach asanas and to adjust asanas. Anyway, so in this video, I'm going to talk to you about what is it. So this concept was actually the first time that we hear about this concept is in 1875 from a mechanical engineer when he put together this concept of kinetic chain, referring to rigid segments overlapping linked by joints, where the movement of one of the joints may impact the other joints. In 1995, this concept was included to describe movements in the human body, especially or specifically when it comes to the movement in the limbs. So if we pay attention to a leg, the lower extremity, the lower limb, when we refer to the legs, we refer that as a whole, as a one system, as a motor unit, as a unit that it moves. Right? We said move your leg, move your right leg forward, move your left leg up and down. But if we pay attention, actually the leg is not one piece. It's a system made of different segments. They are rigid, right? There's no movement here. They're rigid, they overlap, and they are linked by joints. So this creates a kinetic chain, a system of movement that is made of different segments, but they are linked together. So the same thing happens with the arm, the upper limbs. When we talk about the arms, or when we move the arms, usually we move the whole piece. But if we pay attention, this entire piece is actually made of different segments. So we have one segment here with one joint, another segment here with two joints, and then another segment here. And if we pay attention, there are a lot of other little segments here. But let's say we have the hand, the forearm, and the arm as rigid segments, but they are linked together by joints. So at the end, these three pieces, or all these segments put together, create one whole holistic motor unit, a unit that is going to move. And it will depend on if this kinetic chain is open or closed. The movement in one of these segments, in one of these joints, may or may not impact the other segments. So the two types of kinetic chain that we can find are closed kinetic chain and open kinetic chain. An open kinetic chain, which what means is the distal end of that kinetic chain, of that system, right? So if we are a little bit familiar with the directional terms, the distal end is the segment that is further away from the trunk. The trunk is the reference point for this directional term. So the distal end of this kinetic chain will be the foot. And the case of the upper limbs, the distal end, the segment that is farther away from the trunk, is the hand. So in an open kinetic chain, the distal end, the distal segment, the segment that is further away, can move freely. Nothing is stopping that segment, nothing is blocking that segment, so the segment can move freely. So let's think about the arms in Warrior 2, for example. So if we pay attention to the arms in Warrior 2, the hands are free to move. Nothing is stopping the hands from moving, correct? You can flex and extend the wrist, you can move your toes, your fingers, you can flip the palm up and down. So you can do a lot of movements with your hands. Nothing is stopping the hand to move. That means that this is an open kinetic chain. But if we translate or we move to another asana, let's say tabletop, so we bring this same example of this kinetic chain and we plant the hands on the floor, now the hands are not free to move. They are blocked by the floor. I cannot flex and extend the wrist anymore, right? It's already in an extension, so I cannot move anywhere from here because the floor is stopping me from movement. So in this case, now the arm, which was the same kinetic chain that we were looking at Warrior 2, but now this kinetic chain is closed. We also can close the kinetic chain when we, for example, we bring the hands together. They are stopping each other. So these are examples of open and closed kinetic chain. Now let's see how this knowledge is going to be actually useful for our practice, for our teachings, for the way that we cue, the way that we sequence, why this concept that comes from engineering, it becomes relevant when it comes to yoga asana practice. But I will explain that in the next video. See you there.